How's it going? Daily Comic Book Investments. So you guys may or may not know of the wildfires that are happening up in LA. I'm about 3 hours away, so I'm not even close to them. But I do have friends that have had to evacuate, and some of them got their businesses burned down or the places they worked burned down, tons of homes lost, all that kind of stuff. Very sad all around. And I got this interesting question. Someone emailed me, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. It never really crossed my mind. But they asked my opinion, so I figured I'd make a video because I thought it was kind of an interesting video. So this is not to minimize what's going on over there, and a lot of people lost their homes and basically their lives, and so that sucks. But in terms of comic books, you know, I was thinking about this. I was like, okay, there's a lot of rich people that lost their homes. A lot of them burned out. And I know Mel Gibson was doing Joe Rogan, and by the time he was done with the podcast, his house had burned to the ground. He all of a sudden just, hey, burned to the ground. And so a lot of these people are very rich, have a lot of money. So usually when you're very rich and have a lot of money, you have a lot of maybe expensive things. So in terms of comic books, there was already an article that came out that comics and bookstores had to close down, and some of them have been burned. So it got me to thinking, how many homes and comic stores lost very valuable and irreplaceable comics or collectibles? I bet there were some. I wouldn't be surprised if there's one of those homes had an action number one. And that's the thing. It's like, you're not going to all of a sudden like, oh, you have to evacuate. Here, let me go get my action number one. You're probably thinking about your friends, your family, your dog, photo albums, things like that that are not really replaceable. And so there's probably a lot of art, collectibles, memorabilia. I mean, think of Mel Gibson, this is his house. One of a million different, actors and artists that are up there, all burned. All their memorabilia, all probably had collectibles, probably had comics, all gone. Even comic shop owners that had a comic shop, gone. Whatever was in there, you're not sitting there trying to grab everything you have. Maybe you grab some of the more valuable stuff, maybe you don't. Maybe you're like a Mel Gibson, out of town, and then you don't have time to grab anything. So I thought this was kind of interesting. Someone asked me, how would that impact the market? And as of right now, I think people have more important things to worry about than their collectibles and their comic books and whatnot. But it got me thinking, down the line, something like an Action Comics number one, which is probably less than 100 that exist, now there might be one or two less. And it's kind of interesting that no matter how hard you try to protect these things, like you get them in a case, maybe you put them in a vault, all those things, as time goes on, these more rare books are going to get less and less and less and less over time. To a point, maybe in hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, there'll be next to none left of these more rare books. Now, there's even books that are more rare than an Action Comics number one. There might only be 5 known to exist. And what if, someone's house burns down that has one, there's a flood. Like we've had these natural disasters. We've had floods, hurricanes, all sorts of things. And each time, it could wipe out more of these collectibles, which in fact makes them more and more rare. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing. I never really thought about how, as time goes on, even though there's X amount there, or on the census or whatever, it's actually going to get less and less over time. Now, there's not going to be hurricanes and floods and fires happening every day and burning these comics, but as time goes on, another one here, another one there, these are just going to get more and more rare. Something like that's a modern comic book that had a print run of, say, like an Ultimate Fallout 4, that had a print run of like in the 80s, 80,000 something. There's going to be a lot of those that'll stick around, because even if they get stolen, you're not going to whittle them down to 100. It's going to be much, much harder. And I've always had this kind of argument of why maybe an Action one is so expensive and these old Golden Age are so expensive, because they're so rare. They had to survive, world wars. They had to get through those. They had paper drives. They had metal drives where they take out the staples. And they had comic book burnings where mothers would burn comic books because they thought they were evil. All these comics have survived all through that, and that's why the older ones, there's just less and less of them, and they weren't collected. They were probably, comics weren't really collected, whereas like a mainstay, there's always people that collected them, but it wasn't like a main thing. Most people just read them, maybe threw them away, got rid of them, but it wasn't like a main thing, probably until like the 70s or 80s. That's when people really started collecting, and then obviously the 90s boom, it just went out of control, and it's been out of control since then. You know, that's why comic books are, the older ones are always going to be more valuable than the newer ones, simply for the fact is back in the day, they used to read them, throw them away. Now people don't even really read them, they just grab them and stick them in a bag, get them graded or whatever, and they're in perfect condition. So yeah, I was thinking about that. It sucks that, you know, people aren't going to think about their collectibles when their house is on fire, but it's kind of interesting as more and more natural disasters happen over time, it's going to wipe out more and more collections, different collectibles. You know, maybe some of these rich people over there had like a one-of-one, like Mickey Mantle rookie card or something. I'm not too familiar with the sports stuff. And it was like a $10 million card, gone. A painting, original art, you know, a bunch of original art is gone. You know that, you know, all these rich people probably had lots of original art. Could have been comic art, possibly, but all gone because all original art is just one of one. Like a painting, they don't make multiples, they just make one of one. All gone, all that stuff's gone. So yeah, as time goes on and more stuff like this keeps happening, you're gonna have less and less. So I thought it was kind of interesting to think about because I never really did. But yeah, so let me know your thoughts. Have a great day.